Switzerland, 1994. A 21-year-old man is awakened in the middle of the night, just as he had been the night before, by something terrifying. Standing at the foot of his bed, looking down at him was him, the copy. Same hair and same eyes, only it had no soul. At that moment, he made a decision that would change his life and solidify his place in medical history, making him one of the most famous and meticulously documented cases of a doppelganger experience. He jumped out of the third-floor window of his apartment building. This is the true story of Patient A and the doppelganger that drove him out of that window. In the beginning, Patient A was seemingly your everyday 21-year-old. He had no history of mental illness and didn't drink alcohol or use drugs. Because of the confidentiality of his case file, not much is known about his home life. But what we do know is that, after suffering from an epileptic seizure, that would all change. Patient A was admitted to the hospital one afternoon after a seizure suddenly ignited in his head. He didn't convulse on the floor or lose consciousness. Instead, he began to experience something more sinister, more insidious. He began to see an exact copy of himself projected into the room. This was more than a simple hallucination. No. This was different. It felt different. Patient A would describe seeing an exact version of himself standing in his room, usually at the foot of his bed. Even more disturbing is when he described also being able to see himself on the bed as if he were the copy. According to Patient A, the double never spoke and barely moved. Still, he described it as something dark and threatening. It projected an intense, overwhelming aura of malice in the room. The patient reported the double as being hostile toward him, staring him down, as if it were waiting. It wasn't long before Patient A began to lose himself. Was he really himself, or was he the copy? He wasn't sure anymore, and it terrified him. He was losing track of his own body. Nothing seemed real anymore. One night, Patient A experienced an epileptic seizure that proved his endurance for the entity's presence had met its end. Opening his eyes, he was met by the gaze of his double, staring down at him, a parasite he couldn't escape. One moment he was looking down at himself, and then looking up at himself the next. He broke. Terrified that it wouldn't be long before the copy took over his mind and body completely, he made a decision. I can fix this, he thought. Patient A had decided that if he could destroy one body, the copy would be forced into one consciousness. Lunging past the double, he ran. 3 stories above the ground, 30 feet above the pavement, he jumped through the glass window. Incredibly, unbelievable even, Patient A survived the fall, and with no head injuries. He did, however, suffer severe damage to his lower extremities from impact, which would take many surgeries and therapy to heal. At the hospital, physicians performed neurological workups to confirm no brain damage had been sustained, and though they didn't find any, they did spot an electrical storm happening in his head. The seizures, right there in his parietal temporal lobe, happening in real time. Patient A was put on aggressive anti-seizure medications to treat the condition, and as sure as they did, his double disappeared. Physicians explained that the area where the seizures were occurring is the part of the brain responsible for balance, and for telling you where you are, and where your body is in space. Let me put it this way. Right now, that area of the brain is telling you that you are holding your phone, watching this video, and that your body is resting comfortably in your chair. For Patient A, That area was disrupted by the seizures that he was quietly having. Doctors called his condition heautoscopy. Heautoscopy is an unsettling neurological anomaly where a person sees a hallucination of their own body from a distance and faces a deeply confusing crisis of identity. They aren't sure which body they actually occupy. The phantom double usually mimics the person's exact clothing, posture, and current actions. If the person moves an arm, they might perceive the double moving its arm as well. In some eerie cases, internal sensations like pain, coldness, or even thoughts feel shared between the two bodies. Because the brain cannot anchor the self to one location, like patient A, patients frequently report intense anxiety, detachment, or the terrifying feeling that they are losing their mind or dying. As for the fate of patient A, the dual perspective of being in two places at once vanished, and his consciousness settled permanently behind his own eyes. Finally, he was whole. Corpus Christi, Texas, 1983. Wanda Lopez, a 24-year-old single mother, is working the late shift at a Sigmore Shamrock gas station as a cashier clerk. Cautiously and with a quivering voice, she picks up the phone and dials 911. There's a disturbed man inside the store, and he has a knife. The dispatcher was still on the line when Wanda screamed. Calling out her name, she didn't respond, only silence. By the time police arrived, Wanda lay dying on the floor. She'd been stabbed multiple times. She didn't survive. So who'd done this? Officers would fan out across the neighbourhood as witnesses described the attacker, unkempt with a moustache, seen running from the crime scene. 40 minutes later, they found a young man crouching under a pickup truck a few blocks away. His name was Carlos DeLuna. He's 20 years old, and his life was about to change forever. For someone who'd supposedly brutally stabbed someone, he had no blood on him. Not on his hands or on his clothes, not anywhere. That's because he hadn't done it. Carlos Hernandez did. Hernandez lived just blocks away from the gas station where the stabbing occurred, and bared a shocking resemblance to Carlos DeLuna. Same height and same weight. They had the same first name. In fact, in the neighbourhood, people called them Los Tocayos, the namesakes. When investigators later showed photographs of the two men to people who knew them, even family members confused one for the other. Two men, one face, one name. Hernandez was known to law enforcement throughout Corpus Christi. He had a record of gas station robberies and knife assaults against young women, and had later served time for stabbing another local woman with a knife nearly identical to the one used to kill Lopez. DeLuna also had a criminal record, but they were mostly minor offences. He dropped out of school in the 7th grade, and although he was a troubled young man, he was no murderer. In the interrogation room, DeLuna didn't lawyer up and go silent or deflect. He does something that if anyone had listened might have saved his life. He gives them Carlos Hernandez's name, said they'd crossed paths that night, and that Hernandez was the one who went inside that store with a knife. He went on to tell investigators that he ran because he heard the sirens, and knew with the criminal record he had, that being nearby was enough to make him look guilty. He repeats the name for months, but nothing was done. Investigators had already made up their minds that DeLuna was their man. By the time DeLuna finally told his lawyers Hernandez's name, it was too close to trial to do much of an investigation. During the trial, DeLuna's court-appointed attorneys were grossly inadequate. One had never tried a criminal case in court, let alone a capital murder case. And they presented no witnesses or mitigating evidence during the sentencing phase. Even worse, a police audio tape, suppressed and never played at trial, captures officers in the middle of the manhunt that night, chasing a second suspect for 30 solid minutes. A suspect who matched the initial witness descriptions far better than DeLuna did. Unkempt, moustached, running in the direction of the gas station. That suspect was Carlos Hernandez. They let him go. The entire conviction rested on a single eyewitness, a cross-racial identification made in darkness at the crime scene, while DeLuna sat in the back of a police cruiser. That witness would later quietly admit he was only 70% sure. 70%. DeLuna was offered a deal, plead guilty and serve life in prison. He refused. He said he would not confess to something he did not do. Ultimately, DeLuna was found guilty and sentenced to death. He spent the next 6 years on death row, still insisting on his innocence. On December 7th, 1989, Carlos DeLuna was executed by lethal injection. His last words, "I want to say that I hold no grudges." After DeLuna was executed, 5 separate witnesses came forward saying Hernandez had bragged about killing Wanda Lopez. He told people his tocayo, his namesake, had taken the fall. Hernandez died in 1999, never charged, never tried. In 2004, Columbia law professor James Liebman was studying flaws in death penalty cases when a student suggested he look at DeLuna. Liebman sent an investigator to Corpus Christi to find any trace of Carlos Hernandez. The investigator found him in a single day. From there, the floodgates opened. Liebman assembled a team of 12 law students, and they spent 6 years interviewing over 100 witnesses, reviewing suppressed evidence and police recordings. They found court transcripts and looked at crime scene photos. The result was a 430-page report that took up an entire issue of the Columbia Human Rights Law Review. Their conclusion was unambiguous. Texas had executed the wrong man. What happened to Carlos DeLuna wasn't a single mistake. It was a cascade of failures: sloppy police work, suppressed evidence, inadequate defense, and a system that simply did not care enough about a poor young Hispanic man to get it right. Wanda Lopez deserved justice. She never got it. Carlos DeLuna deserved a fair trial. He never got that either. And somewhere in Corpus Christi, the man who actually killed Wanda Lopez, the real-life doppelganger in this case, lived out the rest of his life, free. If you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking around. Just the thought that there could be someone out there that looks exactly like me, maybe living a parallel life to mine, has always sent chills down my spine. The next case that I'm covering is another chilling tale. Without giving too much away, I'll say this. If you've heard of Annabelle, you'll love this one. So make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, fly safe.